Welcome back to The Donkey and the Bee with Brett and Laura Shack-Davis, where we talk everything marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances.
Today, we got a great one. We are talking about the couple's commitment conversation, the commitment to financial freedom, the commitment to getting your money right, and talking about the steps that we went through when we were going through this and having the conversation together. What did it look like? How did we implement this? And really, what are some practical steps for people who need to get on the same page with their husband, their wife, their partner to say, hey, we are doing this. We are pursuing some big dreams here. We're going to be movers and shakers. We're going to get out of this rat race. We are going to change our family.
Yeah, so I think we talk to a lot of individuals, a lot of younger married couples, but then I think a lot of older married couples, not that we're old, but middle-aged married couples who struggle with this. And so this is the reason why we're talking about this, because we want a basis point for everyone to have a conversation. I think this is one of those things that's very difficult to talk about, especially if it's one individual who's very strongly toward financial freedom and the other one is not. And so we're going to give you a few tips, a few strategies on how to start the conversation and exactly what to talk about.
Yeah, that's right. So just to hit it here right on the front side of this, I think that it's so important that you do have some type of conversation like this, that if you are the person who is driving the financial movement or the growth movement in your relationship, that you need to set aside that awkward time, because sometimes it's awkward, and say, hey, babe, hey, honey, like can we sit down? Can we go through some stuff here? Like I have some things that I want to talk to you about. And there's usually one person more than the other. It's usually not the same time where they're like inspired and ready to make this commitment, right? There's usually one kind of driving person in the relationship who it has some kind of inspiration. They have some kind of spark. They read some book or saw some podcast, or they met someone who inspired them to make a change. And I think you need to ride that wave. And in order to actually make a difference in your finances as a married person, you have to have both people on board. So I think you take that opportunity when you're inspired, when you have this, like, I know there's something more I need to do with my life, and we got to get on the same page, that you just take the simple steps we're going to talk through today and say, hey, babe, let's do this. Let's have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we mentioned it before, the whole spark in our relationship and what started the financial freedom roller coaster ride that it is. I guess if you want to start going to that, because Brett was the one who first rode the wave. He got up on the board and he rode that wave. And so it was up to me to either not ride the wave and go back to the beach, or to jump on my own board too and get on board. And so, Brett, I guess you could just start talking about the how we got started.
Yeah, and I think it's important. We'll lay kind of three different parts to the conversation that we had, and it was not a one-time conversation. It's not like we did this as one time. It was the initial conversation here, and then we had many conversations as we're going through this journey together. But the first thing that was important for us is we identified that we were ready. We were coming from a place of pain. We knew we needed a change in our life. We were working multiple jobs. We were working for the man. We were trying to survive and thrive financially in a broken system that really kind of is designed to just take all of your money and allow you not to save, allow you not to have any type of retirement or get out of the rat race. And we started from this place of pain. And I think that was important for us to identify first. Like, we got together and we said, listen, you're working 3 jobs right now. I'm working 2 jobs right now. Like, we got to make a change here. There was this time in our marriage and in my life where, I was like physically sick to my stomach for almost every day before I went to this job that I hated. I was driving an ambulance while going to paramedic school, and I just despise it. Literally, like, I could feel it. Like, my stomach would get knots, and I just wanted to throw up almost all the time. And I knew that I had to do something different. I knew that if I actually got my paramedic license and I got a job as a firefighter paramedic, that I would be trapped in this thing, in this system, and like, okay, I'm going to have this pension or retirement sometime in 30 years from now, but man, I'm going to hate my life. And I knew that was not something I wanted. We had just had our first daughter, and it was like, now is the time. Now is the opportunity, right? I got this spark and I said, hey, babe, like, I know you're in the same spot. You're in your own pain, work related pain, and let's do something different here. So I think it's so important that you start with like, here's where I'm at, and there has to be a big enough reason why to get off the couch. There has to be something that is important enough, or something that you're living in currently that is painful enough for you to say, okay, I'm going to go on this hard journey, this hard fight, and I'm going to commit to this for this multiple years or decades process to hit these financial goals or hit financial freedom or retire early. And so that's where we started. We started with this like, we are in a crap spot right now and I hate it. And I literally like want to be sick and cry. Like, where are you at, babe? And how do we get out of this place?
Yeah. So I had the same kind of experience with the jobs. I did have 3 jobs. It was from, 8 a.m. until 11 p.m., 6 days a week. And so it was rough. I cried a lot before work and didn't look forward to it. And I think we were both at that point where it was painful enough for us to not want to keep going down that road. And what was kind of a trajectory for us, besides reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, but we also went through Tony Robbins' Personal Power, which is an audio walkthrough, and it was amazing. He talks about the driving force of all human behavior is the pretty much wanting to get away from pain or moving toward pleasure. And so I think after we went through that personal power together, we were like, okay, we know our pain. We don't want to do this anymore. It was really hard, and we don't really know our pleasure though. What are we moving toward? We knew what we were moving away from. And so I think that was kind of where our strategy came into play. And so that was kind of, I would say, maybe the next step that we took in like, okay, so if we're moving away from this, we don't want to do that anymore. Well, where are we going? And so, it's that Bible verse, without a vision, the people will perish. And so we needed to have a vision together.
Yeah, so that's really the second part of the conversation we had. It was like, okay, we know where we're at sucks, and we don't want to do this, and there's a lot of pain there. And so pain is motivation, right? It's like potential energy. And I have all of this stored energy, and I need to point it towards something, some goal. And we said to ourselves, all right, well, what is it that we want? Right? We had just had our first kid. We loved camping. We loved traveling, but we couldn't afford to do any of that stuff really. So like, what is it that we wanted to do? So I think it's so important that you come up with here's my goal. Here's my family goal. And you should have family goals for multiple areas of your life, but we're going to talk specifically about the time that we made a financial family goal and what we wanted to do. And it has to be big enough, and it has to be specific enough that it inspires you, that it motivates you to get out of the muck that you're in. Because between where you're at now and for us in that pain season that we were in to where we were in the future when we received financial freedom, like there was a ton of obstacles and heartache and hard nights and tears and loss of money and bad deals and all sorts of things in that long road to get there. But we had to have something big enough and powerful enough that it would get us off the couch, that would allow us to get into those uncomfortable places during that whole journey between those two things. And so that's what we said, like, hey, what is it that we want? What do we want to identify as? What is our goal that we can write out and say, here's what we're going to fight for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to note, it's kind of a little side note, that you are moving away toward the pain, right? And you're moving toward that goal when you set it together. But then there's also going to be new pains that you're going to have to encounter on that path. And I think that's something that I didn't really maybe see in the beginning. I thought I was like, oh, it's just going to be all pleasure. Like I'm going toward the pleasure. It's going to be so amazing. And I think I wasn't really thinking that it was going to be that difficult. I thought it was like, oh, 6 months to a year. Like, well, we won't go out to eat and we won't do these things and it'll be fine. But there was a lot more things that we experienced as well, like not going on big vacations, not shopping anymore. Like we really were like on a really tight budget. And I think that was new pains that came into play during the going toward pleasure process. And so I think that's also important to note that when you're going toward your pleasure, it's going to be a lot of pain. But I think your trajectory mindset of like, hey, I have to go through this in order to get that financial freedom. If you have to keep washing that over your mind constantly to remind yourself that this pain that I'm going through is going to be worth it.
Yeah, that's very true. There was a lot of pain during that season, and there's a lot of pain now. Like
Hmm.
once you hit your goals, your financial goals, your health goals, or whatever it is, there's always going to be pain. So for us, we got together this evening or that evening in question, and when we said, okay, here's what we want, right? We have a young baby. We want time freedom. We want to spend a lot of time with our daughters, and we want to be able to travel, and we want to retire early. We don't want to be part of a system that's gonna trap us for the next 30 plus years working in 9 to 5 every day. So we said, okay, well, let's do these things. We need to. We set a dollar amount. We want to have a passive income of X dollar amount. I think we started with like $5,000 or $10,000, as we want to have every single month. We want to have this number of dollars come in, no matter what, from some type of passive income. And we weren't real estate experts at that time. We've learned much since then, but at the time we just knew like, okay, I've know people who are doing this, and if they can do it, then heck, why can't we do it? Right? So let's write out this goal. I don't have no idea how we're going to achieve it, but we're going to try and get to, $10,000 a month in passive income. And that will allow us to get out of the crap hole that we're in, give us this time freedom, give us the ability to travel, give us the ability to spend time with our kids, pick up our kids every day from school, drop them off, and just really have the freedom. We didn't want fancy things. We didn't care about fancy cars or vacation homes or anything like that. We wanted our time freedom, and our family was the biggest thing for us. And so we wrote this out. We said, okay, we're going to have, this amount of passive income. And I don't remember how long we gave ourselves to get it, but we wrote down, okay, here's a definitive number and here's a definitive time. And crap, man, we had no idea how we were going to get it. But nonetheless, like, we're going to put it out there. Here is our goal, right? And it is big enough and it is powerful enough for us, right? Because it was important to us. This is what we really wanted. This was our driving force. It was powerful enough that when we got kicked in the face and we had a lot of these things, that we knew that this is really what we want, right? We identified our pain and we identified our pleasure. Here's what we're moving towards. Here's what we're moving away from. We just had no idea what was in the middle, right? We had to figure out, how do I do this? Okay, if I set this goal of these financial rewards, how do we even get these things?
Yeah. And I do remember when we told our friends at the time how much money we wanted to be worth, I think, or something like that. I don't know where we came up with this number, but it's a very big number. And I remember them kind of laughing at us in a way like, oh, guys, that's too much. And so that I say all that to give you a forewarning that when you set these goals for yourself and your family, and you share these goals with your family, extended family, or friends, or neighbors, or whoever it may be, you're going to get a lot of flack. You're going to get a lot of kickback. There's going to be a lot of unbelief that comes at you, I think, because they're trying to protect you from getting hurt. And because they themselves can't see it happen, they're kind of self-reflecting that on you as well. And so just forewarning, there's going to be a lot of people who say you can't do it, or that's too big of a goal, or there's no way you can achieve that, or that's ridiculous. Why would you think that? So push past that. Like there's going to be a lot of naysayers, but then there's also the opposite end of that. There's going to be people who really support you and who really cheer you on.
Absolutely. The people who've done it or are on that journey will be your biggest cheerleaders. They know it's possible. They know you can do it. There's going to be other people in your lives that think that there's no way in heck that they can do this. So therefore, there's no way in heck that you can do it. But you 100% can do it, because one of the first pieces of advice that one of my coaches gave me was that if one person can do it, so can another. And I really took that to heart. And I knew that he was doing 100 real estate deals a year. And so if he could do it, then I got to be able to do it. Or at least I can do half of that. And I know that's going to be plenty for me. Right. So I really took it to heart. And I didn't know what was going to be that journey in between. I didn't know how many years it was going to take us. But I knew that the goal was big enough for us to get kicked in the face over and over again and get up and say, okay, babe, let's do this again, right? Like we just failed. We just lost money. We just got cussed out on the phone. We just, whatever it is, right? There was a bunch of hard stuff for many, many years, and there still is now, but now it's different because you're on the backside of that, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
that's a whole nother story. But I think it was so important for us to identify, okay, here's our starting point, here's where we're going. And then we had this conversation of like, okay, well, what's in between? Like, what is it? And I think this is the third point here, the most important point of this is identifying what you are willing to give up or what you are willing to do in order to receive that goal. And and I think there's both sides of this. There's a negative and there's a positive. The negative being you're clearly going to have to give things up. You're going to have to give up your free time. You're going to have to give up some of your play money. You're going to have to budget. You're going to have to do some things. You got to give up some things. But then you also have to do things, right? You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to go do new deals. You got to go learn a new niche. You got to go invest. You got to go figure out even how to invest before you invest, right? There's so many things you have to not do, and they're both hard. People get stuck in this spot because really the like you said a few minutes ago, the tough stuff in between is bigger than either their problem that they're in now. So if their day-to-day work is just not that bad, like they're pretty comfortable in it, they make decent money, and they have a decent house or these things, then they're really going to be not motivated enough, not enough pain to be able to say, screw this, I am over this crap, I need to fight through the hard stuff to get to my goal,
Mhm.
right? Or the opposite side, they didn't make their goal strong enough. They didn't make their goal powerful enough or inspiring enough that when they do commit to it and then they start hitting some of these roadblocks and these hard things, they're like, I don't know. That goal doesn't sound that great. I'd rather just stay over here because, man, it's pretty hard getting up every day and going into learning new things and cutting my budget and saving and all these kind of things.
Mhm. I think it's what helped us along the whole path was gaining new habits throughout that. And that's a whole separate topic on its own. But I think we had different habits that we implemented in our day to day life that helped us get to that trajectory. And so I think maybe just sitting down and taking inventory of what you're doing daily that is, first of all, making you a better person, making you better than yesterday. But then what is also helping you take little tiny steps toward that ultimate goal that you have. Because it really is little tiny, tiny steps that you take every day toward the goal. It's not like you're just going to create that huge, massive goal and then you do something and then the next year you have it, right? It's little tiny action steps that you take daily and consistently that will ultimately get you there.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of these little action steps. What was it that we committed to do and not do in order for us to reach the goal?
I mean, I would say that we committed to, not spend money. That was like the biggest thing was we didn't overspend or overindulge on big fun things like boats and stuff like that. We didn't go shopping. We didn't go to the movies. We didn't really eat out, to be honest. We cooked a lot at home, which is healthier anyways. So that's kind of a benefit. So I think there was a lot of things that we didn't do. As far as the things we did do, the first thing that comes to mind, you can add to this, is we did invest in ourselves. Like we pushed toward gaining more knowledge on investment strategies or, where we can put our money to make it grow. And so I think that was the biggest thing is we invested in ourselves, I think first through this whole process so that we had the knowledge, we had the skills to really just like crush those goals.
Yeah, that's true. I think the one story that comes to mind is we knew nothing about real estate and we had just sold our house and we had a nest egg of money that was like, okay, here's like a year's worth of income. Like we quit our jobs and said, all right, we're going to make this work. And the first thing we did, we went and purchased a list of potentially distressed properties so that we can mail them, right? And we mailed the wrong list. Like we literally put the wrong address on there and these calls were coming in and we're like, oh my gosh. Like as soon as we found out we mailed the wrong list, I was so discouraged because the people were cussing us out. They were dropping F-bombs on us. I'm going to sue you. How dare you send me a postcard? I'm like, bro, it's a postcard.
Like Domino sends you coupons. Like, you're going to sue them?
Right? Like, come on. Like, I'm here. Like, we're literally at the dinner table and the phone would ring and we would both look at each other like, oh God, are you going to get it or am I going to get it? Right? And I get it. And like literally getting cussed out and like my, 6-month daughters right there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, this is not worth it, right? This was those hard bumps in between.
Mhm.
And you know what? We just went back to this like, okay, we're gonna push through this. This is worth it because when I look back, I knew for certain that I could not have that life again. I could not
Mhm.
go back to working for the man and, trying to fight for some retirement government job. I didn't know much about what was ahead of me. That was harder for me to visualize because I hadn't experienced it yet. But I knew that there was so much pain behind me that I just kept pushing me forward. And I knew that the pain behind me was bigger than the pain that I was going through momentarily when I had to answer a phone call and got yelled at, or when I made another offer, the 50th offer that week that got rejected.
Mhm.
Right? I knew that I just had to keep going forward because what we made a commitment to do was bigger than where we were before that.
Yeah, it was definitely perspective. I think when we invested in ourselves and we were listening to podcasts, reading books, having mastermind meetings and just being surrounded by individuals who were like-minded, I think it just really catapulted us to that development and just wanting more and not having the option to give up. I don't even think that we even had that option. It was almost like the burning of the boats thing. Like
Mhm.
we were on that island and we burned the boats and we had no other option but to just keep moving forward and walking through the muck and the hard times. And I think that is really what it takes is just that commitment together of this sucks. I don't want to do this, but this is what it takes to reach that ultimate goal.
Is definitely right.
Hmm.
But so here's a question then. If so we got on the same page right away because we were both in that pain and we both had the same goals, right? But what if your spouse does not have that same mindset? What if they don't have that same either pain or drive for some bigger goal? How do you approach that conversation with your spouse?
I think taking from experience from how we did it was there was something that sparked that first drive to want to create that for your family. And so I think whatever that spark was, a podcast, a conversation with somebody, a book you read, whatever it may be, I think sharing that with your spouse and then them seeing your excitement toward it, I think is something that I would start with because that's what we experienced together. And I know that that was something that worked. But I still know that there's a lot of people who have experienced that, what I just explained, and the spouse still isn't on board. So that's tough. I think that's a hard situation to be in. But I think if your spouse sees you working toward that goal and actually kind of can see your personal transformation if you are investing in yourself, they're going to see the change in you and they're going to be like, oh, wow, like they're really serious about this. Okay, well, maybe I should consider this. So I think it's more of a like you be the change, like
Mhm.
you actually invest in yourself, have different mindsets, listen to those podcasts, and actually put the podcast on like audibly while they're around so they can hear and probably get positively affected as you're listening to it because you're kind of purposefully playing it out loud so they can hear it too. So I think maybe just slow little plays like that. You don't want to beat them over the head with, the book that you're reading, saying like you have to read this. This is amazing. This is going to change our life. Like I think that that's going to turn them the opposite way. And
Mhm.
so I think there's certain ways based on your spouse's personality and the experiences you've had together. I'm sure you'll know kind of the way to go about the conversation or about the strategies. I know it sounds bad, but it is strategies.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think the other thing that I would implement or do is really going back to this idea of identifying your future and really find something and get them involved in a conversation where, okay, what is it that really excites you? What is it that that is your dream? Like, how can we do something, right? And maybe they're just not money driven, but money's really not about money. Money is about freedom of time. And what is it that they want to do? What is it that excites them? Do they want to travel? Do they want to quit their job? Do they want to say, kiss my butt to their boss? Like, do they want to spend time with their kids? Do they want to be a homeschool mom or dad? Like, what is it that really excites them? And put that, I mean, it's really the carrot, right? Like, here's what we can do together. We just need to have a big enough why in order for you and I to come on the same page and pursue this together.
Hmm. Something that came to mind was that there might be a negative association toward money. And I think we talked about this before in previous podcasts. And so I think that is something that takes time. I mean, I can speak from experience that I had a negative association toward money for a long time, and I think it took me years to work out of that. And so I think if both spouses have a negative association toward money and one of them is changing and the other one is still not, they're still in that negative mindset, I think that's tricky. I think that's hard.
Mhm.
Even if you have that meeting of, hey, what's our goal? What can we do with this? I still think they have that like, oh, well, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's for me.
I think in that situation, then your goal is not money. It's not a numeric number. It is first and foremost, like what is the thing, right? It's the time freedom or the opportunity freedom. And usually that time freedom or opportunity freedom has a number behind it, right? Like if I want to do this, then I need to quit my job or I need to replace that income, right? So if I'm making 75 grand a year, okay, now that's my number, right? I need to make the, $6,500 a month or something like that, right? So I think you can reframe these things because people get weird about pursuing money for the sake of money. You don't pursue money for money. You pursue money for the opportunity that it allows you to do. And a lot of times it's family or it's generosity or it's helping other people. But when you have the freedom of time and you're not working for the man anymore, then it allows really that opportunity to do something special or really help someone. So I think if you have a spouse that is resistant to this kind of conversation because they say, I'm not about money, this really is not about money.
Mm-hmm.
This is really for us, this is really about family
Mm-hmm.
and free time with our kids and time to travel and time to do the things that we love doing, not really about money at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when people talk about, going broke and saving money, I think the thing gets thrown out a lot is decrease your expenses, decrease your expenses, decrease your expenses. That's like what everyone only talks about, but I feel like they don't talk about the other side of it. And so I kind of wanted you to divulge on that a little bit.
Yeah. So, okay, I said we committed to do some things, right? We committed to do some hard things. And one of them was to cut our budget, right? We use that term, we went broke. And Laura said we barely spent any money for years. And we still pretty much live like that. We spend very little of what we make. But the most important thing that we committed to do was increase our income because you can decrease your expenses several times and then you get down to zero and you can't decrease your expenses anymore, right? But you can increase your income over and over and over again. And it can literally not have a limit, right? It can go to infinity. So that's what we focused on. How can I bring in a little bit more income and then a little bit more income, right? What kind of side hustle can I have? What kind of extra little deal can I do? And we were just thinking outside the box. And I think that was the main focus of us. Yes, we had a budget and we were pretty strict with it, but our real focus was not on, okay, we cut 20%, right? Our real focus is, okay, how do we increase by 20% and then by another 10 and then by another 20 and then by another 30? Like, how do we double or triple our income over, 6 months or a year and then 2 years and 5 years? Like, that's really where the power is, not in cutting the expenses, and you should, but that's your defense, right? You don't win a game with defense. You win a game with offense, and offense is all about increasing your income. And I think that was really our strategy. How do we go from, okay, I'm going to flip one house a month to let's scale our business, let's hire employees, let's blow this up. How do I go from one house a month to 10 houses a month?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was our focus and what really allowed us to reach our goals relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm. And I think the one thing I want to add to that is you don't increase your income to spend it. Because I think that's what a lot of people do is I'm going to decrease my expenses, cool. And then I'm going to increase my income. But, oh, look, I worked so hard. I deserve a new boat or I deserve a new purse or I deserve this. I'm like, no, you deserve for your kids to have financial freedom for their kids. It's talking about generational wealth. It's not about you deserve whatever. No, I can't stand that language that's around our culture. No. So if you increase your income, you're not spending it. You're actually putting it in a sacred account to eventually purchase an asset. So that's what we did. We had it in a sacred account where we couldn't touch it. We couldn't take anything out of it. It was just in there and it was building, not to just build and just sit there. It was building so that once it get to a certain point and we found a certain asset, we'd put it into that asset.
Yep. It's a simple strategy. But again, we didn't know when we first got started, right? Like we spent those first few years just diving into education, paying for a coach, listening to so many books and podcasts and going to masterminds and being part of a community that had like-minded individuals with like-minded goals and really just immersing ourselves in that. And man, the transformation can be drastic when you just go all in on something like that.
Yep, agreed. I mean, I feel like I'm super, I'm blissfully dissatisfied is what Ed Milet talks about. Like I'm still pushing toward, the best version of me and our goals, but then also I'm really satisfied with where we're at because I think that we've put a lot of time in and we've gone through a lot of pain and um and we've gone through a lot of pleasure too. And so I feel like it's something that we continue to do daily with our habits, with making sure that we're putting in things and not just in our body but in our minds that are gonna catapult us to our success.
Yeah. So one last thing here is I know we talked about how we went broke and we were increasing our income and we were really just the first few years, like we barely spent anything, right? We had a pretty ratty car and we didn't really go on vacations or anything. But one thing we did do, it was, I believe, about 3 years after this commitment. And we had been hustling and going broke for 3 years straight. We said, hey, we need a reward, right? And again, like you said, we're not big on this kind of thing, but there needs to be something enough that keeps you going. And it cannot be all like hustle, 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 and sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. There has to be some type of little incentive in there. So for us, after about 3 years of doing this, we bought a travel trailer. And again, like we had 2 daughters at the time, and we were camping, and then it's 110 out, and like it was nap time, and we're like, this is not working, right? Because our reward was up until that point, we would try and go camping almost every month, and we're doing it in tents, and we're doing it with our girls, and then nap time comes and like, no, this is not working anymore,
This
right?
is in California. We're currently in Texas, so California are able to tent camp in the summer.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this is the thing. This is our thing, our special family thing that allows us to keep pushing, right? That was camping. And for us to keep doing it, we wanted a trailer, right? Because we were sick of sitting in a 110-degree tent with our newborn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we bought a trailer. And again, very modest trailer. Like it was a nice trailer, but it was very entry-level trailer. And it was like $250 a month a payment. And I think something like that is an example that it doesn't have to be so hardcore all the time, right? We are pretty go-getter kind of people. We're kind of hardcore, but still, it was a calculated expense that allowed us to continue to push forward. And I think sometimes you just need to have those conversations like, hey, this is kind of getting like overwhelming and kind of sucks. Like, what can we do to reinvigorate ourselves here to give us like little wins along the way? And our little wins was every single month, we take about a 3-day thing and go and hit a new camping spot and take our family. And really, it was a piece of the end result, right? Because our whole end result was time freedom to be able to travel and spend time with our family and our kids. And this was a little piece of that every single month. It was so attainable that we could go do it, and then we can come back and hustle and work and sacrifice financially and sacrifice with our time to work extra and pursue these goals. But it made it more bite size. And it put little like 1 month windows on it. And it was like, okay, we can keep doing this. We got another 28 days and then we'll go camping again.
Mm-hmm. No, that is true. Yeah, I think having it's almost like a light at the end of the tunnel that you need sometimes during the struggle. So yes. Well, awesome. Do you have anything to add to what we already talked about?
I think just a final bit of advice. I think that people underestimate the power of being on the same page with some of these goals in your marriage, but I think finances is one of the biggest ones. And I think it is so important that you have this conversation, that you can get on to the same page. And it's really not about the money. The conversation is really about your family. It's really about your goals. So find something together that excites both of you and really gets you excited enough that you can say like, okay, I'm going to take some uncomfortable action. I'm going to sacrifice for that goal, because that goal together, our family goal, not my personal goal, but our family goal is worth it and it excites me. And this is a long-term goal that I can commit to for years or a decade.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I hope you got some golden nuggets to take away, that you're able to now confront your spouse or just talk to your spouse about, this financial freedom conversation, and that you have some talking points to get started. So we thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.